Hi BookTube, let's talk about Oldboy, shall we? Oldboy is a graphic novel manga series by Garon Tsuchiya and Nobuaki Minegishi. This was first published in Japan in 1997 and since has been made into 3 different films. The first of those films was South Korean and that was made in 2003. This is the award-winning version that most people know, and that is the sort of most famous iteration of this story. The second film, which was made in 2006, is an Indian version, which is the unofficial one. This is called Zinda. The third film version of this was made in 2013, and that was an American remake starring Josh Brolin. I find the filmic uptake on this story really interesting because there were elements of this story that I think probably I would have enjoyed more in film, and I think that film medium has more potential and more capability to properly convey these. One thing that's interesting to note that the films do differently is that they all give a different time period for Goto, the protagonist's imprisonment. In the manga, Goto is imprisoned for 10 years. In the 2003 South Korean film, the protagonist is imprisoned for 15 years. In the 2006 Indian version, called Zinda, the protagonist is imprisoned for 14 years. In the 2013 American film, the protagonist is imprisoned for 20 years. This story follows a man who we later find out is called Goto, and he has been captured by unknown people and imprisoned in a room, not a normal prison, for 10 years. He is then released in this first volume, and we see him adjusting to the outside world and trying to come to terms with what has happened and trying to figure out why it happened and who did it to him. The mystery was very, very, very exciting, and the journey was great fun. I really enjoyed reading most of this series. I sped read through the entire 8 volumes within a few days. I won't go into any spoilers, but I was very dissatisfied with the ending, so I won't really talk too much about that, but the journey itself was really fun and really exciting. The questioning that Goto does about, what's happened to him, and the teasing from the other end, because the other end does sort of become involved. It gets a bit repetitive, so I don't know if that can be done better in comics, because I have noticed that kind of thing before. I found similar problems with long series like Y: The Last Man. Even though that was incredible, I did find at times that it got a little bit repetitive, and I could have done without certain callbacks. 2 things I think could definitely have been done better on film. The first part of Goto's mission to find out where he might have been held captive, or where the people who put him there might be based, is really, really fun. It did get a little bit repetitive, so I think on film that could be done really, really well. The second thing is the explanation for the motive and the whole mystery. Why was he put in this room for 10 years? I just don't buy it. It was so weak. So I think it kind of involved some philosophy and some spiritual thinking, and I'm down with that, but it just didn't come across well in the end of this series. I think potentially on film, with good acting, some good emoting, that could maybe be done a lot better on film. The game is a very elaborate one and quite an epic one. It spans 8 volumes. The reason given for the game is just so weak that it does not warrant this kind of effort and time and thought behind it. It's just bizarre, and it just didn't sit well with me. Character-wise, Goto, the protagonist, is never really developed or explained. You don't really get any backstory to him. The backstory that you do get is linked to the reasons he's been put away. Makes sense for this story, but I didn't quite get enough to really know who he is or what he's about, or to know why I should care about him, or that would give me any clue as to why he was working in the way he did. Nothing really. He was just kind of personalityless. Also, Eri, the girl that he meets when he gets out, this is not a spoiler, this happens within pages, it's very soon. She is very one-dimensional and relentlessly submissive. This is a problem I have with a lot of female manga characters. They are overly submissive and give endlessly without asking for anything in return, and that I have an issue with. She also had no personality except for this undying interest in Goto and care for him. She uproots her life for him, and it's just, that's not cool in reality. One thing to note, if you are familiar with the film version, is that I gather the film version focuses quite heavily on the revenge factor, the revenge drive, and extreme violence. Those don't really feature in this version at all. It's not really a question of revenge when Goto gets out, it's a matter of questioning and trying to figure out the reason why it's happened to him. So there are probably moments of anger and upset and, you know, irritation, but it doesn't quite reach revenge in this version. Having said all this, it wasn't completely horrible, and I would recommend it. It's a good read, and even if the ending isn't satisfying, I think that A, my opinion is not the be-all and end-all, and you might like it regardless, and B, you know, sometimes a story doesn't have to have a great ending to be enjoyable along the way, and I did enjoy this along the way. You might particularly like this if you are into thrillers, mysteries, mind games, philosophizing, spiritual stuff. You might also like this if you like a film called The Game, starring Michael Douglas, which I think had potentially kind of motives behind the game and the mystery, but I think it was done better. Thanks for watching, I'll see you next time.